I firmly believe that women are designed to create. It's in our DNA. But how do you know whether or not you're meant to express your creative power in the form of a business? How do you know if you are meant to be an entrepreneur? Well, I'm here to tell you that you absolutely can create income by making an impact. And you can turn that passion project into profit if you want to. In today's conversation, we're talking about how to know if you are ready to make that leap and if you are meant to be an entrepreneur. Welcome back to the show. I can hardly believe I'm saying these words, but Powerhouse Women 2019, our annual event, is only a few weeks away. So I can't wait to see all of your faces here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And it's kind of hard since I'm so close to the event. I've been working on it for the last year. It's kind of hard for me to pick my favorite thing, what I'm most excited about. But right up there at the top of that list would have to be our Pajamas and Prosecco kickoff party on Friday night, September 6th. We haven't ever done this before. It's a huge experiment, but I think it's going to be the most fun. And who doesn't love a good girls' night in? And the opportunity just to connect with like-minded women in a dressed-down way. Less intimidation than having to get all dressed up. So I'm super excited for it. But I've had a lot of people ask, okay, what do I wear? Where do I find cute pajamas? Because yes, we really mean it when we say we want you to wear pajamas. And I'm really excited to announce that we have partnered with literally the cutest luxury sleepwear line called Jane Collection. Let me say that correctly. And Jane is super special to me because the founder, Pamela, is actually a member of the Powerhouse community. She is a small business owner just like us, and I'm excited to support her in this fun way and also support all of you who are wondering what the heck to wear. So whether or not you are coming to the event, you can actually shop her collection at janecollection.com, and because we love you, we're hooking you up with a 15% discount if you shop using the code POWERHOUSE now through September 7th. And of course, I'll link all of that in the show notes. But she's going to be launching a brand new collection this fall, and her current styles have been seriously selling out like crazy because they are so cute, they're so comfy. So don't wait, check them out, janecollection.com, and again, I'll link that for you in the show notes. Okay, so I'm excited to dive into this conversation today because I feel like it really hits home on what my journey over the last 10 years has looked like, where I went from never seeing myself as an entrepreneur, was never on my radar, to now owning several businesses and teaching other women how to be entrepreneurs. It's kind of the weirdest way that this is all unfolded, but I also think that a lot of the women I talk to, they almost resist calling themselves an entrepreneur. They have a passion, they have something that they want to do, but maybe it's not a business yet, so they kind of cringe at calling themselves a business owner or feel like they haven't made it yet. They haven't earned that title. And I know that was the same for me when I was creating things or, writing my book. It didn't seem to me like I was an entrepreneur, even though I was creating something of value. So today we're going to talk a little bit about, how do you know if you are meant to turn that passion project of yours into a viable business? How do you know if you're supposed to lean in and learn what it is to be an entrepreneur? A lot of women ask if the Powerhouse Women event is for them. They'll ask, well, okay, I don't have a business, but I really do feel like there is more for me, or I really do feel like I want to connect with like-minded women, or there could be a potential business in my future. And whenever women ask, is it the right time for me to attend if I don't have that business yet? My answer is always, without a doubt, yes. Because the event is really for a woman who who has that feeling deep down that there is more for her, that there's a greater sense of fulfillment or purpose, or maybe there is like the seed of a little idea that she wants to create. And I firmly believe that we all have unique talents and gifts, and the world needs them. Every single one. So those of you who are sitting there and you feel like, gosh, I just wish I knew what my purpose was, my calling, you might right now have the seed of an idea that could grow into something that could become bigger than you ever imagined. And that was exactly what happened with me back when I was initially writing the book and thinking about hosting an event. It was all just the seed of an idea. It wasn't fully formed as a business yet, and actually didn't become a business until well over 2 years in to that writing process. And even after we did our first event, I didn't really consider it a business. I didn't even have an LLC set up for Powerhouse Women until about 2 years in. And so, number one, if you're having that same question, is the Powerhouse Women event for me? Absolutely yes. If you are looking to connect, if you want to be inspired and lean into that feeling that there's more for you, absolutely. If you have a business and you want to learn some tangible tips and just resources and tools from women who are out there doing the things that it takes to make a business successful, then it's also for you. But, some of you will have this passion project that starts as this fun little side thing and eventually grows into a really profitable business. Others, you might just always operate your passion project as kind of like your side hustle, and it'll never turn into a profit, and it isn't meant to. So I want you to know wherever you are in that journey, it's still just as valuable that you step into what you are called to create. And that doesn't make one better than the other or one more valuable than the other if it's generating income versus if it's not. So wherever you're at, I just want you to really listen to this conversation today and notice where your mind is fighting you, possibly, on this feeling that you're not an entrepreneur, telling you lies like your business, your idea could never become that viable profit-generating entity. So it's sort of funny. I think back to I was on Facebook one day and totally took the bait and clicked on this quiz that said, "Are you meant to be an entrepreneur?" And it was funny because I was like answering the questions hoping that this quiz, who knows who even came up with it, was not going to tell me that I had like chosen the wrong career path. But what actually stuck with me, and I think it did actually say that I was meant to be an entrepreneur, so dodged a bullet there, but it was interesting to see the questions and how differently I would have answered them 5 or even 10 years ago. Because I was not one of those people who came out of the womb thinking about how to create products or sell things. I wasn't the kid who had like a lemonade stand every other week, or I think back to, I remember Mark Cuban sharing something about like all the little ways he found to start businesses when he was a kid. That just wasn't me. I really had to learn to think and act like a business owner over time. So I'm just here to reassure you that even if right now you don't feel like entrepreneurship, like fully in its purest form, is for you in the future, that may be the case right now, but that doesn't mean that it always will. You can learn what it takes in order to sustain a business and do the marketing and the sales and the, all the things that it takes to turn an idea into an actual income stream. So I thought what would be fun today is if we played a little game of you may be an entrepreneur if. So when I think back to how in denial I was about the fact that I really did want to become an entrepreneur. I really did want to turn my ideas into a business. I would say, I wish these are the questions that the quiz would have asked me, because I would have nailed it and I would have been like, oh my gosh, maybe I really am meant to be an entrepreneur. So this is just a fun little way, a little quiz, if you will, that I will give you to see if you think that you might have the little seed within you of becoming an entrepreneur, if you're not already. Okay, so you may be an entrepreneur if you love to create. So I might not have thought about having my own business, but I did always love to create. And there were all these different phases now looking back that I didn't necessarily turn into a business, but I had my little beaded bracelet phase. I'd make like friendship bracelets and give them to people who weren't even really my friends. But I loved to make bracelets for people and necklaces, with the beads and the fishing line. That was a huge phase for me. I did have a thriving scrunchie empire. I really wish that I would have kept up with that because I could probably be a gazillionaire right now that scrunchies came back. But my mom taught me how to sew, and it was pretty easy to make a scrunchie. So I had my own little sewing room and would make scrunchies until my fingers pretty much fell off. And then who can forget? I don't know if any of you made these. This is probably such a test to see what era you grew up in. But does anyone remember making those tiny little pot holders that you would weave in a loom? Please tell me you remember those. If you do, please reach out. We could be friends. So, I think I always loved to create. I always loved to create things that brought people joy or that helped them in some way. And loving to create, wanting to turn something that is essentially nothing, or it's a random combination of ingredients or materials, and you make something out of it. Even if that's an online business and you take your knowledge and you create an actual program or a way to solve a problem, that is truly at the heart of what being an entrepreneur is, someone who loves to create. And I think that's where the entrepreneurial bug starts for most of us, is you see a need that isn't currently being met, and you decide that you're going to do something about it. So hit me up if you're going to start a store, an Etsy store with those little mini pot holders, and I will be your first customer because I think those are still so needed. Which actually kind of leans into the second "you may be an entrepreneur if" statement, which is you may be an entrepreneur if you love to solve problems. And I once heard the term entrepreneur defined as someone who solves a problem for a profit. Someone who solves a problem for a profit. So obviously that profit piece is key because I think having an actual business means that you are generating revenue, you're generating income. Otherwise, it's more of just a hobby, which is perfectly okay too. But again, this isn't saying, do you currently have a business? This is saying, you may be an entrepreneur if you love to solve people's problems, because if you already are in that mindset and you already see ways to address a need or a problem that aren't currently being met, then it's just a matter of figuring out how do you turn that into a viable business? How do you turn that into something that you can generate profit from? And truly, in my experience, when you are creating a really valuable solution and actually having people pay you for it, depending on what it is, but in my field with live events or personal development or courses, people tend to take it more seriously if they are financially invested in it. Meaning you could be solving a problem and doing it for free just out of the goodness of your heart, but could you help people get even better results if you packaged it in a way that was so valuable, it absolutely was worthy of someone investing financially in it? And I think that is something really good to sit with and think about. If you're already solving problems, how can you do that in a way that is so valuable to people, they will absolutely invest in it? So you may be an entrepreneur if you love to solve problems. And the last one, and this is, I'm going to give you both sides of it. So you may be an entrepreneur if you are willing to take risks. And I thought about this. Initially, I started writing it as in, there's a very common perception that business is risky and there are sometimes financial risks involved, or even scarier, I think for a lot of us, is the risk of our reputation. Like, what if I fail? What are people going to think if I fail? And those risks are absolutely part of starting a business and becoming an entrepreneur. But it's funny, when I started to think more about it, that I had this perception back when I started my very first job. If you've listened to episode 1, I sold carpet, very glamorous. And I had this idea that there was more security in going the traditional job, the corporate route, than there was in starting something of my own. Again, back then, I wasn't, starting a business wasn't even on my radar, but I think I did believe deep down that it was more safe or secure to go the traditional route. But it wasn't long into that full-time job, that first real, I always call it my first big girl job, that I realized that maybe that perception wasn't quite true, that there was more security in this traditional job, because I started in commercial construction, selling flooring, in about 2007, 2008, and it wasn't long into that first career that the recession hit. And commercial construction was actually hit a lot harder than any other industry. So I sat there, watching people my age being laid off and having a hard time finding jobs. I watched them, struggle to even find something in their field. A lot of them had to go and, work retail or, serving jobs. And not that there's anything wrong with that at all, but it just changed my perception that maybe, yes, there's risk in starting a business, and being able to ride the wave of risk as an entrepreneur is definitely a skill to build up. But I would never want the idea of risk to be what stops someone from pursuing their big idea and turning it into a business. Because if you really think about it, there's no more security in going the traditional route, because you don't ultimately have control over how much you make or whether the company succeeds or not. And it gave me when I got that different perspective, that was really what gave me the push to start something of my own, which initially was more of a side project, a side hustle. And eventually that's what I turned into, a business of my own. But I liked the feeling that I could ultimately control, in some sense, how much I made, or I could control if, I was spending too much, or, if my profit margins were high enough to keep me in business. And I had no control over this big corporate entity that I was working for, and I was kind of at the mercy of what decisions they made. So I honestly don't know if I would have had the confidence to take that leap for myself if I weren't in a position that really showed me a different side of, yes, there's risk in starting a business and being an entrepreneur, but there really is just as much risk or uncertainty, lack of security, if you will, in other professions as well. So I don't want that to be what stops you. Okay, so to recap, you may be an entrepreneur if you love to create, if you love to solve problems, and if you are willing to take risks. So I just want to end this with a reminder that everything you need in order to turn your passion into a profit is something that you can learn if you deep down feel really called to create whatever it is, that blog, that product, that online business. And if you're currently in a space where you're wondering whether or not you could ever turn your idea into a viable business, if you have no idea where to start, if you feel paralyzed by self-doubt, then that is really why this podcast and why our events, our community all exist. This was all literally created for you by a woman who has walked through those exact same feelings. And by that woman, I'm talking about myself, of course. So we want to equip you with not only the mindset and the skills necessary to help you get out of your own way and into action around that big idea of yours, but we want to remind you that you are not in this alone, and that there are other women on the journey who are just right alongside you and willing to give you all of their secrets to help you along your own path. So this is really a perfect way to end in encouraging you that if you resonated with today's message and if you feel like you are finally ready to take that next step and lean into this idea that maybe there's more for you, maybe your idea could turn into a business, I really want to encourage you to join us at Powerhouse Women 2019. It's in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's a beautiful place to visit in September, and that is exactly when the event is, September 6th and 7th. And I can promise you that making that leap and investing in yourself is one of the best ways to show yourself, to show the world that you are worth it and that your ideas are absolutely worth investing in. So until next time, just remember you're not meant to do this alone, and we are all here to support you along the way.